Mr. Schäffer, thank you for agreeing to speak to Cross-Border Talks. First of all, can we say something in general terms? What did the war in Ukraine change for the EU and for the eastern part of the EU in general?
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Well, I think the most important thing is what in Germany it has been coined as Zeitenwende. So the overall security architecture in the continent is fundamentally changed. This is probably the first thing. The second thing is that we are experiencing a tragic amount of lives lost and infrastructure destroyed that we haven't seen to that scale in the past decades. Although I want to stress here that this common misconception that it's the first war on the European continent since the Second World War is simply not true. It's not even the first war in Ukraine. And the third thing that probably changed on a EU level is that we can see that Ukraine, but also Moldova and subsequently Georgia are recognized for the first time on a EU level as potential, respectively, candidate countries, which is a good development. It's just very sad that we had to experience a war before we could actually take those steps. And maybe as a side effect from that, we also see the growing importance of Central and Eastern Europe for the European Union, because I still have some sort of feeling that we too much rely on the German Franco motor rather than an overall Central European motor in the European Union.
Thank you for bringing forward the Central European and possibly Southeastern European countries. Bulgaria and Romania are a specific case. You know that we are waiting for many years to join the Schengen agreement, and we still are out of it. We don't have visa-free travel to the USA. We're still not members of the Eurozone. So there is some specific position of Romania and Bulgaria in this region. How is the role of these two countries changing as a result of all the events you described?
I start with the second part. Of course, the Black Sea region is a part of the European Union with the accession of Romania and Bulgaria in 2007. But I think that now, due to the continuing escalating situation starting in 2014 with the annexation of Crimea and the temporary occupation of some parts of Ukraine through the Russian Federation, we see an increasing importance of the Black Sea area. And of course, being the two coastal EU member countries, Romania and Bulgaria, become increasingly important, especially when it comes to the security question in the wider area. We are not only talking about a possible escalation, further escalation of the conflict, because both countries are, as well know, in NATO, and there might be a intended or unintended incident in the Black Sea area that could lead to a further escalation. But it's also important for the passage for grain, for instance, and especially food export, but also with regards to possible energy routes, etc. The question that you asked with regards to Romania and Bulgaria still not being part of the Schengen area, well, on the one hand, I see that there is a necessity to have certain criteria that need to be fulfilled when you want to join a certain program in the European Union, be it the Schengen area, or be it, for instance, also the Euro, which both countries have not introduced yet. On the other hand, I can see that if we look at the development in Croatia, and they will introduce the Euro, they will most likely join the Schengen area and have been 6 years shorter a member of the European Union, I can see that there is a growing frustration among the population, but also among the governments. And here I would say we should find a solution as soon as possible to avoid a, so to say, second and first class membership. I'm a member of the club, but not completely, which is something that would only lead to a further fragmentation in the European Union. And I'm convinced that we should avoid this at all costs.
To what extent these two countries staying out of the Schengen agreement is a sign that their geopolitical position is somehow more ambiguous and more unclear. Their fate is not completely decided, and maybe it remains to be resolved in the future.
I don't think that the result of them not joining Schengen is a sign that there is a geopolitical ambiguity. I think that there are concerns with regards to the protection of the then newly Schengen borders. There are concerns, especially, of course, due to the geographical location. But geopolitically, I don't think that there is this should be interpreted as a sign that Romania and Bulgaria are considered as not geopolitically important. I think everyone, probably not everyone, but the vast majority within the European Union, and especially the EU governments, is very, very glad that Bulgaria and Romania are a member of both EU and NATO, especially nowadays.
Okay, continuing on, we stay in the region of Central and Southeastern Europe. We see that Poland and Ukraine have advanced significant cooperation in many domains, and at the same time, Turkey and Russia have also been engaging one another. How are these two alignments seen from the perspective of the German-speaking world? What do they mean for our region in Europe?
Well, thank you. I mean, I don't think that I can speak for the German-speaking world, but I can give you an observation from that part, probably. I think that especially a deeper cooperation between Poland and Ukraine is something that is welcome, because it, on the one hand side, is necessary. It is, I would say, in a majority acknowledged that Ukraine is not only fighting for its own independence, but it's fighting for all of our freedom. On the other hand, it, of course, a deeper cooperation gives the possibility to remain in this sort of hesitant position, especially when it comes to further increasing military support for Ukraine from the side of Germany and also Austria. The cooperation between Russia and Turkey in certain aspects, I think, are a sign of the strategic ambiguity that Turkey is trying to position itself. And of course, as a NATO member country, it is sort of baffling to see that they are willing to sacrifice certain commitments in order for their own political gain. With regards to, for instance, especially when we look at the situation that the willing countries that want to join NATO, Sweden and Finland, are held back by two countries, and one of them is Turkey, which might, of course, in the overall situation, make sense with regards to trying to position themselves sort of between the EU and the Russian Federation. But on the other hand side, I don't know if it's the best way to geopolitically position themselves in the Black Sea area, given the potential spillover effects that a further escalation of this conflict would also ultimately have on Ankara.
We see affirmation of Turkey as a mediator between, let's call them simplifyingly, West and East. on the basis exactly of this strategic ambiguity which you spoke about, how should our countries, which are in the Southeastern Europe, approach this rise of Turkey, or what would it mean for our region? Does it mean that we also will become more ambiguous strategically because of our close relations, maybe economically and others, with Turkey? Or does it mean that maybe we have to see that as some kind of a danger and we have to fortify ourselves?
Well, nobody wants to fortify their own borders and the necessity to return to some sort of entrenchment when it comes to European integration, I would think. Because, I mean, the overall idea about European integration is to abolish borders. Right now, we're just shifting them. And this then also holds true, of course, for the Black Sea region. Now, of course, again, here also applies the situation that we have certain rules that need to be observed before an enlargement can happen. And if this is not something that is viable and possible, I see that there is a danger that especially Turkey, of course, orientates itself in a more ambiguous situation, and that would have ramifications for the region. I think the bigger challenge is, of course, the war of aggression that is coming from the Russian Federation for the Black Sea area. But ultimately, yes, we might have to see how the situation develops, also politically in Turkey. We must not forget there are elections about to be held. We will see how the political situation in Turkey will develop. But nowadays, I think if one thing we should have at least learned since the 24th of February, that we cannot exclude any development anymore as unreasonable as it might look like. And therefore, I can't really give you a satisfying answer probably in how to further react to it. I would just say we need to carefully observe the development in the region and then be ready to react to all possible developments. A better anticipation of potential developments is in order in general on a European and especially on a EU level.
Okay, let's focus now on Bulgaria and Romania from the perspective of your perspective of an expert on our region, and also especially on the Danube region. So, do you think that Bulgaria and Romania should push for wide-ranging cooperation, and to what extent the Danube Strategy could be an element of it? Isn't the Danube Strategy somehow limited in its resources or possibilities for spurring good relationships in our region?
Thank you. Well, this is a very interesting, very important question. I would say that in general, the European Union strategy for the Danube region has a tremendous potential for the both countries, because we have these different priority areas that could be beneficial for not only improving the Danube waterways, which is always an issue, not only between Bulgaria and Romania, but in general, we could use much more potential here. We have the situation that's a cross-border cooperation, and that not only in a sense of being able to actually cross the Danube over bridges is something that could be tremendously improved, but also the possibility to work together and do cross-border cooperation. I always have to think back on the physical bridge that connects Romania and Bulgaria between Ruse and Giurgiu, where there is it's a sort of choking point not only for the transportation that goes over that bridge, but also the challenges to just have an exchange on, for instance, the academic level. There are still certain hurdles to it, and I think that within the European Union, and especially then also, of course, within the macro-regional strategy, which the EUSDR is, there is a tremendous potential to further improve that cross-border cooperation and that cross-river cooperation, because historically it has not fulfilled the overall potential that we have through this connection, which is only, to my opinion, going to increase, not only with regards to political cooperation, but also for the transportation in the Black Sea area, but also to further waterways towards the single market of the European Union.
Okay, I certainly agree there is great potential in Bulgarian-Romanian relations, as I'm one of the practitioners, I believe, of these relations. But you say potential, to what extent what are the obstacles for the realization of this potential? We know that nation states in our region tend to think more nationally centric, tend to think in categories of competition. They tend to set themselves in different ways internationally, not in synchron so much. So from your perspective of an expert on our region, what obstacles should be overcome or appear before the realization of this potential?
Yeah, on the one hand side, of course, this is the sort of shortcomings that the EUSDR has, where we could use a lot more incentives also from the aspect of possibilities to finance these cross-border corporations. There's still the challenge that within macro-regional strategies, we do not have this possibility to initiate new legislation, initiate new institutions, or get additional funding. So we need to rely on the existing ones. And as you rightly said, there is a tendency to still think in the borders of a nation state. I think the possibility that especially Bulgaria and Romania could use in that region is, on the one hand side, utilize much better existing structural and cohesion funds. And on the other hand, we need to incentivize regional cooperation on a EU level even more than what we do right now. Because I firmly believe that if we continue to think in these national borders within the European Union, we are missing out on a huge possibility to work across borders, and it shouldn't be something that holds us back, because we must acknowledge that there are regional differences, there are regional disparities, and on the one hand side, it's good that we have different regions in the European Union, different historical experiences, different cultural experiences, but that shouldn't hold us back to cooperate where it makes much more sense. And overall, the stressing of the principle of subsidiarity, which is something that is more and more heard on a EU level, that the European Union is should only be engaged where it's better coordinated on a supranational level. I would fully agree if we use the supranational level to incentivize further regional cooperation, and that would much better fulfill the principle of subsidiarity, as it is when we say we need the competences to be given back to the national states. We need much more regionalization on a EU level.
You're based in Vienna, as far as I know, so certainly it is important also to discuss about the changing or redefinition of Austria's role in our region. Austria is one of the biggest investors maybe in any of the countries or in most of the countries of our region. So how is war in Ukraine redefining Austria's interests here?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right. Our institute is based in Vienna. The overall discussion that has happened with the war in Ukraine was mainly about neutrality, in the sense that on the one hand side, it's very important still in Austria. I don't think that we will see a discussion on the neutrality status being sort of adapted anytime soon. But on the other hand, it was also clearly defined that neutrality doesn't mean that there is no possibility to support Ukraine. Maybe not to an extent militarily as other countries have done that, but neutrality doesn't mean that you cannot act in solidarity towards one of our partners in the region. And I think this is a welcome discussion, and that we need to continue this discussion, and that we need to constantly talk about what role Austria also has within the European Union, and that the situation that Austria is more or less surrounded by NATO member countries is not also sometimes a possibility to further stress its own neutrality with regards to the very good geopolitical location of the country. But Austria has traditionally and still does see themselves as a country that builds bridges. And I think this becomes more and more important for our region. We've talked about the physical bridges connecting Bulgaria and Romania that definitely could be extended, but also with regards to further fostering cooperation, approximation, and then ultimately also the necessity to help to rebuild Ukraine. And I believe that Austria will remain one of the crucial partners in that aspect, and will remain a country that is committed to support a country in the wider region that is defending its own territorial integrity and defending its very own freedom.
We are aware also of the traditional economic cooperation between Germany or German-speaking world and Russia, which is now in a big crisis. And we observed that even in the recent days, the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz was in China. Apparently, China is an important country for German economy. What is your appreciation or opinion about the results of Olaf Scholz's visit in China?
I'll take the first aspect of your question because I know much more about the challenges resulting from relying too much on the cheap and easy energy source coming from the Russian Federation. And this, although we have at the latest in 2009 seen that the Russian Federation is definitely willing to use energy as a political leverage. When the energy flow through Ukraine was for the first time terminated, we have relied on that mantra. Even in the coldest times of the Cold War, the Soviet Union did always deliver energy, and we've built also the economic growth on that cheap energy coming from the Russian Federation. There would have been enough time to foster a transformation. Now we have to do that very, very quickly and very, very painfully. And this is something that we should learn out of this. And that connects to the trip of the German Chancellor to China, while I acknowledge how important, and especially also in comparison to the Russian Federation, the Chinese market is, but on the other hand, the voices that could be heard here, and also with regards to selling critical infrastructure, like recently been to Hamburg again, also parts of the Hamburg harbor to Costco and a Chinese company. I think that the solution out of a high dependency and a high vulnerability from the Russian Federation to another country like China would be the absolute wrong lesson that we should learn out of this. And now that we've understood that the perceived interdependency between the European Union and the Russian Federation is actually a dependency to different extents from both partners, we should not shift to a other wrongly perceived interdependence, and therefore I can understand the criticism that is there, as much as I can understand that a German chancellor should go on a official state trip to China. We should always take it with a grain of salt and not learn our lessons that the 24th of February has at the latest taught us.
Let us finish with this. If interdependence with Russia has not been working recently, and if it's not, you don't advise great interdependence with China, then what is the way forward for German-speaking world or for the EU? Is it to what extent it lies in closer relations with the third world, with the Middle East, or maybe what is the way forward exactly? Where is the hope? Because certainly my guess is that events like Brexit and war in Ukraine maybe could reduce the European influence in the world.
Yes. I think this would be the answer to it, to make sure that the importance of the European Union and also the importance of cooperation on the European continent is not further diminished. And that would be, I would say, a threefold approach. The one approach is we need to make sure that the cooperation within the Union and the unity that we have seen in the very beginning of that attack on Ukraine is not fading. We see already cracks appearing, and we need to continue to work together as a united entity with all the discussions, with all the negotiations that are out there. But we must not let the unity on a EU level wane in the future, because that is the cracks that the Kremlin is going to try to exploit. The second part is that we find a possibility how to foster and ensure democratic development, not only in the immediate neighborhood of the European Union, but also within the EU and also the transatlantic partnership. Because while we see the rise of autocracy globally, we see also an erosion of democracy in very established democracies, not only on the European continent. So the part will be strengthening our own democracy and expanding this further on the continent. And then with this, globally acknowledging that geography is here to stay. which means that the neighborhood to the Russian Federation will not change in the future. What will change in the future is that we will see a Russian Federation without Vladimir Putin. Sooner or later, it's just simple human nature that we will see a Russian Federation without Vladimir Putin. What will that mean for us? How can we work together afterwards? How can some sort of reconciliation here look like? This is something that we might also already now take into consideration. The late chairman of our institute, Erhard Busek, has always talked about the Danube as the second river of European integration, following the river Rhine between France and Germany as the first river of integration and reconciliation. And I think we need to extend that waterways further, and maybe also not in the near or medium future, but in the long-term future, think about the possibility that maybe also the Volga can become a river of integration and reconciliation for the broader European continent. And then I think if we manage to preserve our values, and if we manage to export our values, this could also finally become again a attractive way of governing globally, because we kind of seem to have lost the overall appreciation and the overall benefits of what a democratic development can do for us. And this would be very important to bring that back. But that includes also that we do not do this only on a top-down level, and that we cannot only rely on our governments and having elections every couple of years, but we need a broader citizen engagement, a broader movement that stands up and continues to fight for not only freedom, but also democratic values. And this will be probably the biggest challenge of the three that I have laid out in my answer. Thank you.